You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
PackersTalk.com.
We're home for in-depth and thoughtful Packers analysis. I'm your host, Gil Martin. My co-host is my good friend, Sean Tehan. In addition to this show, I write for the PackersPost.com and Cheesehead TV, and Sean was a TV sportscaster in Minnesota. We're here to talk Packers because you're all here for one thing, and that's a love for Green Bay football. Sean, we are in mid-November. It's getting cold out there. Playoff implications starting to become more and more important, and this game has a lot of playoff implications. But before we get to that, how about a word from our sponsor?
Make or break time in the NFL. If you want to be a good team, become a great team, you got to make things happen. And hey, you might as well get a seat while you're at it at the home games. And before we get started, how about a few words about our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packer fans. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packers game tickets, go to PackersTalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. If you're following with us on YouTube, if you're following us live, watching us today, thank you very much. And you can see it right there on your screen, ticketking.com, PackersTalk.com/tickets. And feel free to chime in the comments section. Get in the discussion with Gil and I. We're going to be talking, obviously, big game coming up, playoff rematch coming up this weekend at Lambeau Field. Get your predictions in. Gil and I will be going over our predictions later in this show. But hey, Gil, it's Niners week, and hey, you know what? The Packers, it was ugly last week, but they still got a win thanks to big old Carl Brooks. How about him?
What a big play that was. And I mean, you know, as they're kicking, I'm like, okay, we lost. This game is over.
I was right. Yep, me too. Yep.
The reaction that you saw the players, I'm like, hey, wait a minute. You know, it was so important to get that win. You needed a divisional win. Can't go 0-3 in the division. The tie-breaking implications were huge. It shouldn't have been as close as it was, but I will never apologize for getting the win.
And Matt LaFleur said that too. You don't apologize for winning in the NFL. And you've heard it a lot of that's a lot of coach speak too, but it's true. But in case those who are wondering why we're talking about Carl Brooks, also, if you're listening later and not watching with us live, if you're not watching us live, what are you doing in the first place? But Carl Brooks was named the NFC Special Teams Player of the Week after he blocked Cairo Santos's 46-yard game-winning field goal attempt in Chicago last week. That's Brooks' second block of his career, and his first one was last year at Lambeau Field in Week 8 against Minnesota. He blocked former friend Greg Joseph's 44-yard field goal attempt. And the last Packer to earn those honors was Keyshawn Nixon after he returned to kick 105 yards for a touchdown in a Week 17 win over Greg Joseph's Minnesota Vikings at the tail end of the 2022 season. Greg Joseph never officially even played a game for the Green Bay Packers, yet he's involved with the special teams talk quite a bit. But fourth time, though, that block since 1995 that a game ended with a blocked field goal attempt under 50 yards, and it was the second one in 2 weeks. Kansas City's Leo Chenal, former Wisconsin Badger, blocked a Will Lutz field goal attempt down in Kansas City the week before to keep the Chiefs' then undefeated season alive. But yeah, Carl Brooks, Gil, you and I were texting back and forth on the old Twitter waves this past weekend, where you said it best. Carl Brooks saved our bacon because the Packers did not deserve to win that game, and yet he was the guy who helped make sure that we advanced to 7-3 instead of downgrading to 6-4.
Yeah, big play, and you know, keep this win and that play in the back of your mind depending on how this season turns out. Sometimes, you know what? You get that one moment, and it's a guy who may not start and may not be a star, but comes up big and makes a huge difference in the trajectory of a season.
What a great late-round find that Carl Brooks has been for the Green Bay Packers. A sixth-round pick by Brian Gutekunst in the 2023 draft. He's been awesome. Another guy, a member of that draft class, who's had some worse luck so far on the field, it's running back Marshawn Lloyd, a guy who, very exciting coming out of Southern Cal. He has been dealing with hip injuries and ankle injuries and hamstring injuries. He was on the injured reserve list. He was ready to come off the IR, and then he woke up with appendicitis on Friday, and the Packers placed on the reserve non-football illness list. Gil, this guy can't catch a break, man. It's such a bummer. Obviously, in case you're wondering, also Jordan Morgan, the Packers' first-round pick, he was placed on the IR with those lingering shoulder issues that he's had since training camp. But, man, Marshawn Lloyd just the worst luck you could ever have, I would say, in your inaugural season in the NFL.
Yeah, he hasn't caught a break, and that's a real shame. You want to see him get a chance to show what he can do. And as of right now, 6 carries in one game for 15 yards, 1 catch for 3 yards, and that's it. And the frustrating thing, I guess, from a fan's perspective, after the draft in the preseason, you heard Brian Gutekunst and the coaching staff just so excited about, can't wait to see what Marshawn Lloyd can do. Well, we're still waiting. Obviously, we wish him a quick and speedy recovery. That's the most important thing. He's got to miss 4 more games, and then they can activate him to practice again, and we go through this whole process. Is it still possible he comes back before the season ends? Yes. And on the plus side of things, if there's one position that he could probably come back and make some kind of a contribution from, despite not practicing a lot, running back is probably that position.
Yeah, and he's a guy who just, you saw some of the runs he had when he did play earlier this year, where there was that big run he had against the Colts. It was called back because of a phantom holding call, or maybe it was an actual holding call. Who knows at that point? But his ability to just burst through the hole, and it looks like he's being shot out of a cannon sometimes, the way that he's able to run the football. And he was a guy who I felt like was going to provide a different element and some kind of nice, a different change of pace coming out of the Packers backfield. But it is nice that they've had depth at that spot. Josh Jacobs obviously has been really good. Emmanuel Wilson has been really solid when he's in there. Chris Brooks has been a really awesome surprise. Oh, there goes your book, Gil. So it didn't want anything to do with you. Like supposedly Marshawn Lloyd's appendix doesn't want anything to do with the Packers this year. So, or lack of appendix now, but it's terrible luck. And it's not, the guy's not fragile or anything like that. And Jordan Morgan's not fragile either. This is football, man. It happens. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
It comes with the territory. It comes with the territory.
Now, if this was an injury that happened away from the football field, yeah, you'd have a right to be pissed off. But this is something where it's like, hey, especially with appendicitis, it's so random. It happens. You have no control over it. Hopefully we can get him back for the stretch run, but still a bummer nevertheless.
Yeah, you don't like to see that happen to anybody, especially a guy with that much potential. But hopefully he'll be back soon. And look, if you take a big picture look at it, 2 things. Number one, right now, the running game has been doing really well without him. Yep. So it's not like they're depending only on Marshawn Lloyd to carry the load. And then second of all, hopefully in 2 or 3 years, we look back at this rookie year and say, oh, wow, he overcame this really difficult start where his rookie year was wiped out by injury. But look at him now.
Yeah, and a guy who, speaking of injuries, and we're going to get to the Packers injury report in just a sec. Actually, we're going to do that right now. Jair Alexander dealing with that lingering knee issue. It kept him out of the Detroit game before the bye. He only played a few snaps against Chicago, and then he didn't return at all in the second half. He hasn't been practicing this week. Linebacker Edgerrin Cooper, who's shown some really good things this season, he's dealing with a hamstring issue that came up on Wednesday in practice. He didn't practice on Thursday. Matt LaFleur told the media that it's a bit of a concern, and his status for Sunday's game against San Francisco 49ers is in doubt. And talk about an area of weakness for the Green Bay Packers. It's at linebacker, and Edgerrin Cooper's probably been your best guy this year, and you may not even have him on Sunday, which just really, really stinks for the Green Bay Packers and the timing of this game.
It does, because there are some key matchups that we're going to get to later where both of these players could be very important in the matchup game, and to not have them available really does hurt the Packers.
I know Jair had a rough 2023, and he had the suspension for conduct detrimental, seemed to get things worked out, away from the football field behind closed doors. But the Green Bay Packers are a better football team when Jair Alexander is playing. When he is healthy and he is playing, they are a much better football team. He is so critical. And that game against Chicago, where Caleb Williams probably had his best game of his NFL career. I know he didn't throw a touchdown pass, but he made some great throws, though, late in the game. He made some great decisions. He was really solid with the football. In general, there are a lot of checkdowns, sure, but Jair Alexander makes life a lot harder for an opposing offense when he's on the field. So it really stinks. And it was that final play, that final defensive play for the Packers in that win in Jacksonville, where he came up hobbling after that non-contact injury. And it was a relief initially where it's like, oh, this isn't a season ender. It's just something really minor, but clearly it's something a little worse, because it's still still there, and it doesn't seem to be going away.
Yeah, and I think the bigger problem with both of these players being potentially out of the game, and we won't know until game time or maybe a little before, the drop-off, the lack of depth at these two positions makes it an even bigger concern.
We got to talk to Kramer from Seinfeld, his balm guy. Maybe he'll help during Cooper and Jair Alexander. Rub some of that on, and then it almost lost Kramer a lawsuit in Seinfeld. Maybe it could work getting the Packers.
Who told you to use a bomb? Who told you to use a bomb? Did I tell you to use a bomb? No. Hey, you know what? Maybe they could do that, apply that, and Jair and during Cooper will surprise us and be ready for Sunday's game. But speaking of Sunday's game, San Francisco 49ers, the defending NFC champions, still, I think, the most talented team in the NFC despite having a 5-5 record this year. Well, they're coming to town. And let's start out by focusing on the Green Bay offense and the San Francisco defense. Green Bay's offense, total offense this year, 4th overall in the NFL. They're tied for 8th in scoring. They're 9th in passing. They're 4th in rushing. San Francisco's defense, well, it's been the standard. It's been pretty darn good. Total defense, they're 6th overall in the NFL this year. They're tied for 16th in scoring defense. They're 8th in passing defense and 8th in rushing defense. Gil, there's a lot of talent on both sides of the football on the Green Bay offense and the San Francisco defense. What's a matchup that we should be cluing in on and really, really focusing on between the Green Bay offense and the Niner defense on Sunday? I got to start with what has really been the foundation of the Packers offense all year. You got to establish the run. And particularly, I'm looking at the middle of the Packers offensive line against the middle of the San Francisco defensive line. And, you need Josh Myers and Elton Jenkins and Sean Ryan to be opening up some holes. And it is not going to be easy. This is a good defensive front, but they may be missing Nick Bosa on the outside, but, in the middle, they're going to have to do something to make sure that Fred Warner doesn't run free and just stuff the run and shut down Josh Jacobs.
And Green Bay's offensive line has done a pretty good job in the run game this year. Green Bay's offense, their running backs are averaging 4.9 yards per carry this year. That's 6th best in the NFL. But San Francisco's defense, even though Nick Bosa is now hurt, that could change things. Javon Hargrave, he's been missing most of the year, a guy who's an all-pro defensive tackle when healthy. He's been hurt, but still, Fred Warner, he's the heartbeat of that, not only the defense, of that entire San Francisco 49ers team. San Francisco's defense, they're allowing opponents to rush for 4.3 yards per carry. That's top 10 in the NFL, tied for 9th best in the league this year. And you talk about Josh Jacobs, though, and the interior offensive line. And Josh Jacobs, I was just yelling during that whole Bears game on Sunday, feed Josh Jacobs. Feed Josh Jacobs. I know Jordan Love is one of the highest paid players in NFL history. I know that. I understand he's a talented player, but the Packers offense starts and ends with Josh Jacobs getting the football. He has to be the focal point moving forward, and this rushing offense absolutely has to be the focal point. Jacobs, though, he's got 838 rushing yards this year. That's 3rd in the NFL. He had 76 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown in Sunday's win over Chicago. Also had 4 catches and 58 receiving yards out of the backfield. He was really solid. Now, the 49ers rushing defense, they haven't allowed an opposing individual player to rush for more than 100 yards this season. So it's going to be hard, but Josh Jacobs is the kind of back who can handle a front like the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, and the thing I love about Josh Jacobs is his ability in very close quarters to just find a way to get a little more room than you think is there.
Yes.
And, he's not the type of guy. Aaron Jones would be able to break a 60-yard, 70-yard run not at the drop of a hat, but he was always a threat to be able to bust a long one. Josh Jacobs, he takes a 3-yard gain and makes it into a 5 or 6-yard gain. He takes a 6-yard gain and makes it 11. But those little yards, they add up. And, you talk about that Bears game, and I think Matt LaFleur is finally getting the fact that he's got to establish the run and stay with the run. Josh Jacobs had more rushing carries than Jordan Love had passing attempts last week. Okay, by one, and that doesn't include, the Emmanuel Wilson runs and all of that. So you got to stick to the run. That helps keep San Francisco's offense off the field. It makes life easier for Jordan Love when he does have to pass. Josh Jacobs and the running game is the foundation that this offense is built on this year.
Possessions were at a premium in Sunday's win in Chicago, and Green Bay only punted once, and Josh Jacobs getting more carries than Jordan Love had having pass attempts. That's the way I want it going forward, because that means the Green Bay Packers offense is doing something right. I'm going to throw out a number, though, for you. 78 rushing yards. I feel like that is the magic number for Josh Jacobs to get to on Sunday. That's the average amount of yards the opposing leading rusher has rushed for against the 49ers when the 49ers have lost this year. Ty Chandler had 82 yards for the Vikings. Kyron Williams had 89 yards for the LA Rams. James Conner had 86 yards for the Arizona Cardinals. Kareem Hunt had 78 yards for Kansas City. Kenneth Walker, he had 54 rushing yards for Seattle in their win on Sunday against San Francisco. If you get Josh Jacobs the ball and you can get him, he can get 80 rushing yards, Green Bay is going to be in good shape, and they're going to have a legit shot to win this football game. But outside of that, though, the matchup that I'm looking forward to watching, really, it's Jordan Love versus Fred Warner. And we had touched on Fred Warner. We had talked about him a little bit just a few minutes ago. But Fred Warner, I feel like he's the best Mike linebacker in football. He's the heart and soul of that team in general. You got to know where number 54 is at all times. Jordan Love obviously has struggled with giving the ball away this year, 11 interceptions this year. That's tied for the NFL lead amongst all quarterbacks. The interception, though, thrown to Chicago last week's win, it wasn't a bad read. It was just a bad ball that got away from him. But outside of that interception, I mean, Jordan Love played great. He really played really great. And the thing is he looked healthy. He could move around. He could run around. He had a rushing touchdown as well. He had nearly that rushing touchdown, that scramble, that 10-yard scramble in the red zone, and that eventual game-winning drive for the Packers against the Bears on Sunday. Jordan Love's got to take care of the football, and Fred Warner's the first guy that he's got to look out for at all times, because that guy could ruin your day in a heartbeat.
He can. And, Lord, when you think about the difference in performance between Fred Warner and Quay Walker, I don't even want to go there.
No.
But, Fred Warner is a veteran. He's smart. He's athletic. He is a dominant force. Now, he hasn't played as well the last 2-3 games. He was early in the season. He was dominant.
Yeah.
I mean, he was all over the place. Hopefully, he's not going to go back to that dominating form against the Packers. But, in the past, we have really been victimized by him, and we can't let it happen on Sunday.
And Nick Bosa, obviously, he's a great edge rusher for the Niners. It sounds unlikely that he's going to play on Sunday. He has that hip oblique issue that's going on with him right now. Fred Warner, as long as he's on the field, the Niners will always have a chance. That's my opinion. And you look at all those losses they've had, it's been by just the thinnest of margins for the most part. Their biggest blowout loss was a 10-point loss against the Chiefs. And that's it. They've been in every single game. So for Fred Warner, he's the guy. Don't let him take over, or else it's going to be a rough day for Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packer offense. Now, switching it up, San Francisco offense and the Green Bay defense. San Francisco's offense, even though they didn't have Christian McCaffrey for a while, Brandon Ayuk, who just got a big payday earlier this year, he's out for the year with a torn ACL. The offense is still humming along. Second overall in total offense this year. They're tied for 8th in scoring, 4th in passing, 7th in rushing. Really, really good on offense in general. And then the Packer defense, 15th overall in total defense. They're 10th in scoring, 13th in passing, and 14th against the run. Gil, we've been kind of hinting at this, where with the Jair Alexander and Edgerrin Cooper injuries, how much it could really affect the Packers defense. But what's a matchup we should be looking forward to between the Niners offense and the Packers defense? Yeah,
to me, it's how do you stop Deebo Samuel and George Kittle? And under normal circumstances, the answer would be Jair Alexander and Edgerrin Cooper.
Yeah.
And that's where the big concern comes in. These are no Brandon Ayuk. We know that. So these are the two biggest receiving weapons. Maybe you throw Christian McCaffrey in there, but I would also want Edgerrin Cooper possibly covering McCaffrey out of the backfield. So these matchups are a big concern, because if the Packers aren't healthy at these two positions, it's hard to answer. And how do you slow down guys like Kittle and Samuel and McCaffrey?
And even though they don't have Brandon Ayuk, they still have plenty of talent. Obviously, George Kittle, he leads the team in receptions and receiving touchdowns. Deebo is doing what Deebo does. He has 490 receiving yards, 79 rushing yards, and a couple touchdowns this year. Jawan Jennings, who we haven't even mentioned, He leads the team with 588 receiving yards. He's a darn good receiver. He had a Super Bowl. He had a touchdown in the Super Bowl last year. Ricky Pearsall, their first-round pick, who survived a really horrific situation, miraculously survived a terrible situation in the preseason. He missed the first few games of the year. He's back. He's got 11 catches, 132 yards, and a touchdown in 4 games since returning from injury. And it's just a matter of like, hey, the Niners, it's just a matter of like, hey, we get to pick our poison. There's so much depth there. And obviously, the head of the snake, though, to me, is Christian McCaffrey. And Christian McCaffrey, you had mentioned where he is just so good. He's so talented. Obviously, he was a killer against the Packers in the playoffs last year, where he ran for just under 100 rushing yards, scored a couple touchdowns, including the game-winning touchdown late in regulation, had 30 receiving yards, 7 catches in last year's NFC Divisional Round playoff game against the Packers. He's obviously a stud. He's only played in a couple games this year. He was dealing with that Achilles issue. He supposedly flew out to Germany to get some opinions on the matter and get the opinions and everything medically just to try to get him cleared and get him more up to speed. But then even if he doesn't go, Jordan Mason proved that he's a very, very good NFL back. He's averaging 5.1 yards per carry this year. Isaac Guerrero is an explosive guy out of the backfield. The rookie out of Louisville, former Wisconsin Badger as well, 6 yards per carry this year. And not having a guy like Edgerrin Cooper who could chase these guys around if they're rotating backs is really going to hurt. But Christian McCaffrey, he's the number one guy you got to stop if you're the Packers on Sunday.
Yeah, he is sort of the heartbeat of that offense. And, you got to disrupt him. The fact that he may not be 100% healthy even now, or that he's just sort of getting back into football shape, for lack of a better way to put it, that may benefit the Packers a little bit. But, the matchups with the linebackers, Quay Walker may have the speed to stay with Christian McCaffrey, but he doesn't have the football sense to stay with Christian McCaffrey on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and the Packers, they had a pretty solid defensive game plan last year against the Niners. They just fell a little short. A couple fourth-quarter interceptions from Jordan Love, really, that sealed the fate of the 2023 Green Bay Packers. But another matchup, though, I do want to touch on is we got to talk about the quarterback, Brock Purdy. He's been pretty good in his NFL career. Not bad for Mr. Irrelevant, the kind of career that he's had. And he's 6th in the NFL in passing. He's 3rd in passing yards per attempt. But he has a tendency to throw the ball and turn the ball over, Gil. He's got 8 interceptions this year. That's tied for 9th most in the NFL. But he's also a dual-threat runner as a quarterback. 267 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns this year. And we saw how much the Packers struggled with Caleb Williams a week ago, where he ran for 70 yards. He didn't get in the end zone, but he definitely made an impact with his legs, where the Packers better have a better game plan for Brock Purdy. And Xavier McKinney, I feel like he's got to be better in the passing defense to make sure that Brock Purdy can throw that ball away and throw it into danger. Because last year, Brock Purdy should have had, in that NFC playoff game, should have probably thrown 3 interceptions. I think if Xavier McKinney, if he makes those similar decisions and tries to thread the needle like he did quite a bit in that game last year, I feel like Xavier McKinney's going to have a good day.
And the other thing is, McKinney probably had his worst game as a Packer last week against the Bears. So you look for him to bounce back. He's been spectacular all season. That is going to be an interesting chess match because, especially if Jair Alexander is out, Purdy is going to want to throw away from where McKinney is. And it'll be interesting to see how that chess match plays out.
It's weird that McKinney, the bar is set so high for him now, where he really struggled, even though he led the team with 9 tackles on Sunday. The bar is so high for him, where he's got 6 interceptions this year. Now it's 2nd in the NFL to Detroit's Kirby Joseph, but he's been so good, and I feel like he's due for a bounce-back game for sure on Sunday, and hopefully it comes against the San Francisco 49ers, who have been the bane of Packer fans' existence for way too long. Way too long. Real quick, some key stats and figures. Turnover ratio this year, the Packers are +5 overall. That's tied for 7th best in the league. 49ers, they're +3, 11th best in the NFL. Penalties. Well, Green Bay's offense played a pretty clean game when it came to the penalties on Sunday. They committed a season-low 3 penalties, tied for the fewest in the game since the Jacksonville game on Sunday on offense. 70 penalties, though, this year on the offensive side of the ball. That's 12th most in the league. 62 penalties on defense. That's tied for 11th fewest in the NFL. San Francisco's offense, 60 penalties this year, tied for 7th fewest in the league. And their defense, 50 penalties this year, tied for 2nd fewest in the NFL. Pretty disciplined when it comes to the penalties in San Francisco. Third down, the money down. Green Bay's offense, 36.6% this year, 11th worst in the NFL. On defense, 36.1%. That's 13th best. This is a shocking number, though, right here, where San Francisco's offense, they're 45.4% third down on offense, which is Kyle Shanahan, that's typical, fourth best. But their defense, 43.4% third down rate on defense. That's 8th worst in the NFL. That was a bit of a surprise seeing those numbers right there for San Francisco. And lastly, the red zone. This is where the big surprise is for me. We're on the San Francisco side more than anything. Green Bay's offense, they're the 6th worst red zone offense in football right now, 19th in red zone defense. San Francisco's offense, they're the 7th worst red zone offense in the NFL this year and the 10th worst red zone defense. So a lot of facts and figures, a lot of numbers there. But I feel like, Gil, we look at that where San Francisco is very highly ranked in so many areas in offense and defense, but red zone has just been a big bugaboo for them like it has been for the Green Bay Packers.
Something's got to give. Something has got to give. And you know, one thing, just to briefly touch on it, the play calling in the red zone last week by Matt LaFleur was just questionable at best.
Too cute.
I'm going to be polite. It was questionable. He has got to be a little bit more aggressive in that red zone and a little smarter. Just, you know, down and distance have to be taken into consideration when you're calling plays down there.
He got too cute, in my opinion. You have a beast of a back in Josh Jacobs. Feed him the ball. Even if Emmanuel Wilson is in there to give Jacobs a breather. Feed your running backs the ball. They got a good group there. The Niners injury front. We mentioned Nick Bosa. He's dealing with a hip oblique issue. He hasn't been practicing this week. Offensive tackle Trent Williams dealing with an ankle. He hasn't practiced this week. Running back Christian McCaffrey. It's more of a rest day, but still kind of rehabbing that Achilles. He hasn't practiced. He didn't practice on Wednesday. Defensive tackle Kevin Givens, who's third on the team with 3.5 sacks this year, dealing with a groin issue. He didn't practice on Wednesday. Quarterback Brock Purdy dealing with a right shoulder issue. Remember, he had a right elbow issue, a right elbow injury suffered in the NFC Championship game a couple years ago as a rookie. It could be some tired arm. I don't know, maybe, but he's been limited this week with a right shoulder issue. And then the Niners have a laundry list of guys on the IR and the PUP list. Includes Brandon Ayuk, Javon Hargrave, Talanoa Hufanga, Elijah Mitchell, Ambry Thomas, Dre Greenlaw, and Drake Jackson. A heck of a list right there. You can field a pretty good football team with those names right there. But all those guys obviously will not be available for the Niners on Sunday. Gil, real quick, why does Green Bay win?
Green Bay wins if they win the turnover battle and if they run the football enough. I think those are the two biggest keys for the Packers if they're going to emerge victorious. How about you?
For me, it's improve on third down, improve in red zone offense, and make Josh Jacobs the focal point on offense. I feel like the offense has got to have their best game of the year to have a chance against San Francisco on Sunday. Gil, why does Green Bay lose?
If they don't have an answer for McCaffrey and Ayuk and Kittle, if they can't slow those guys down, it could be a very long game. And I'm also concerned about not getting enough pressure on Brock Purdy.
If Chicago had a really good day against Green Bay's defense on third down, that can't happen against the San Francisco 49ers. If they can't get off the field on third down, we're in for a long day at Lambeau. Gil, with that all being said, what's your prediction for Sunday?
This is going to be a really close game. This is going down to the wire.
Yep.
To me, the biggest concern is the injuries. If Jair Alexander and Edgerrin Cooper are just not available or very limited, that is just the wrong matchup to have not be in our favor right now. I think the Packers keep it close, but I think the 49ers just always find a way to beat the Packers. I think it's going to be 27-23. And that the game will be in doubt in the final 30 seconds.
I think it's going to be the same point differential. I do think the 49ers will win as well. I think they win 20-16. I think it's going to be lower scoring than you think. It's just a matter of the Niners are 5-5 right now. And again, those 5 losses have all been really tight. And they are right now, even though the benefit for the 49ers is that they're in a weaker division than the Green Bay Packers are, where they have a shot to win the division still. They're only a game out for the division lead. They're 5-5. They're a wounded animal backed in the corner. That's dangerous, I feel like, for Green Bay. I think Green Bay's going to come out. They're going to come out swinging, though. The Packers, they didn't forget what happened in the NFC playoffs last year. They had them, and they know that. But I feel like the Niners They just have our number right now. And I feel like where these teams are right now, I think the Niners do win on Sunday. I hope to God, Gil, that we are wrong, though.
Yeah, I do too. It's to me, it's the injuries, and I think the Niners need it more.
Yeah, I agree. And Packers are sitting pretty, but man, you got an opportunity to bury these guys. You got an opportunity. Will they do it? I don't think so, but I hope so. Hope is a dangerous thing, my friend. It's a dangerous thing. Gil, what articles do you have coming up on Cheesehead TV and the Packers Post? Obviously, big game this weekend. Probably, in my opinion, outside Detroit, the most talented team in the NFC coming to Lambeau Field so far this year, outside the Detroit Lions. What do you got cooking online?
Well, I talked a little bit about the struggles of Kenny Clark over on the Packers Post. In the last 2 games, he hasn't even made a tackle, which is almost hard to believe. Talked a little bit about that. And then over on Cheesehead, I talked about the chance for the Packers and Jordan Love in particular to get a little redemption after last year's playoff exit.
Yeah, hopefully Jordan Love can end his turnover streak on Sunday. It'd be very good timing to happen against the Niners. And with Kenny Clark, that guy is double, triple teamed every time. But it is shocking that he hasn't been popping up on any stat sheets the last couple of weeks. So some good stuff. Tune into Gil's stuff. Cheesehead TV, Packers Post. Gil, you ready for some trivia?
Let's go for it.
Well, anyone who even remotely follows this matchup between the Packers and the Niners, they know that San Francisco, they've had Green Bay's number for far too long. Since 2012, the 49ers own an 8-4 record in head-to-head matchups against Green Bay, including a perfect 4-0 record in the playoffs against the Packers. Now, outside the playoffs, it's been a while since Green Bay last hosted the 49ers in a regular season game at Lambeau. That was back in 2018. The Packers won a thriller over the Niners on Monday Night Football, 33-30. Again, this game was tied late in the fourth quarter, 30 apiece. The 49ers had a chance to get in field goal range and win the game, but they committed a key turnover, which led to a walk-off field goal by Mason Crosby for the Packers to win it. Gil, in the 2018 49ers-Packers game, which 49er committed the turnover and which Packer was credited with the turnover?
Oh, wow. Okay. I remember the game, and I believe they were down to like their third quarterback. So I think that was C.J. Beathard.
C.J. Beathard is right. Yeah, because I remember how infuriating it was where it's like, how is their third-string quarterback having such a good day against the Green Bay Packers?
Yeah. I remember Rodgers leading the team down the field for that winning field goal by Mason Crosby. And I remember almost being out of breath at the end of that game. It was so nerve-wracking. You know what? Kevin King.
You nailed it. Kevin King. C.J. Beathard threw the interception. Kevin King registered the interception. And obviously Gil remembers this very well. But for those who need a refresher, the Packers tied the game at 30 with just under 2 minutes to go after Aaron Rodgers found Devontae Adams for a 16-yard score after a solid kick return and an unsportsmanlike penalty against Tony Brown of the Packers. Remember Tony Brown? The 49ers started with the ball at their own 47 on the ensuing possession. They got it to 3rd down and 3 at Green Bay's 46 with more than a minute left in regulation. Beathard went for the kill shot deep down the field. Kevin King turned at the last moment, intercepted the pass at their own 10-yard line. Green Bay then would drive 81 yards down the field on their ensuing possession to set up a chip shot, 27-yard game-winning field goal for Mason Crosby. Gil, I specifically remember that being a crazy night in Wisconsin in general because I was half watching that game. The Brewers, they were playing in L.A. against the Dodgers in Game 3 of the NLCS. The Brewers held off and won that game 4-0. They regained home field advantage. And it was around the same time where they clinched that game where the Packers end up sealing the deal against the 49ers on Monday Night Football. It's just a crazy night for a Wisconsin sports fan in general.
Talk about a win-win. That was the ultimate. So
yeah, it was a bummer, though. That was the same year, though, that Mike McCarthy ended up getting canned a few games later. The Brewers, they went to Game 7 in Milwaukee against the Dodgers, and they couldn't get to the World Series. It broke my heart. It broke the sports fan in me. It broke my heart. I was hurt. I was so hurt, Gil. It was a great moment in time for those few hours. But
yep.
Yeah, it just couldn't recover after that. But Packers, they're looking for some revenge on Sunday. 49ers hoping to keep their season afloat, avoid a losing record. The 7-3 Packers, the 49ers 5-5. Kickoff from Lambeau Field scheduled for 3:25 Central, 4:25 Eastern, 2:25 Mountain. 1:25 Bay Area time. Packers had these guys a few months ago. Hopefully we can see some progress from last season's heartbreaking playoff loss.
Yeah, and fingers crossed. If the Packers win this game, their chances of making the playoffs are about 90%. They would have a big tiebreaker on San Francisco and on a lot of other teams. This would be a great game to come away with the dub.
Let's go get it. Let's go get it. Just get this one for us, please, Packers.
Yes,
please.
Go, Pack, go. All right.
Please.
Yes. Well, that is going to do it for us today. We'll be back here next week and Packers play on Thursday. Of that, follow us on Twitter at Gil Packers and at GB Packers Sean to stay up to date on all things Packers or to ask us questions. Or you can email us at gbpackersean@gmail.com. Make sure you're subscribed to Packers Talk on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Big thanks to PackersTalk.com for powering our show. Thank you for listening. Until next time, go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go.